Power Rangers is a show about good versus evil. It's usually pretty cut and dry. The good guys look like this, you know, a little bit of, and the bad guys look like this. It's a show about humans versus monsters. They fight each other, but sometimes they do relate to each other a little bit, and sometimes there's a little bit of an attraction. Because while sometimes the villains are just these ugly looking monsters, you know, sometimes you get a little bit of a gem. You know? I don't know, this didn't actually happen in Power Rangers Turbo, but I know if I was a Turbo Ranger, you know what I mean. But in all seriousness, today we're going to talk about times that the Power Rangers dated the villains, and this actually probably happened more times than you would think. I was initially just going to make this video about one particular episode, did a little bit of digging, and it happened about 5 times. And I'd say the most famous example of this is in the episode A Date with Danger in Power Rangers in Space. At the beginning of the episode, there's a fight between the Rangers and one of Astronema's henchmen, and when this henchman wasn't doing enough damage, Astronema steps in to try and take out the Rangers themselves, accidentally taking a little swipe at her henchman, and that pisses him off. He stops fighting the Rangers and turns his sights on Astronema, and right before he's about to take her out, Zane swoops in and saves her, which doesn't make any damn sense. Dude, this could have just been it for Astronema. They could have ended the show right there, and they wouldn't have to lift a finger. Zane escapes with Astronema and takes her to a little area in the woods to recover and heal. He takes care of her and tries being nice to her, and she's very, you know, taken off guard by this. It's very weird. Rangers and the villains aren't supposed to get along and actually supposed to try and kill each other. It's clear that Zane has a thing for Astronema here, and she kind of gets that hint and takes off leaving and just lets the Silver Ranger be. And over the next few days, they end up continuing to think about each other, and there's a little bit of an attraction there, and they also look at like a picture of each other. They, for some reason, somehow have that. So they secretly just kind of fantasize about each other and try to keep it a secret from the rest of their team. And wanting to get a little bit closer to him, Astronema disguises herself as a normal human on Earth and pretends to bump into Zane. And she leaves Zane a little note saying, "Meet me in the woods where you saved me." And they're gonna have a little date, and obviously Zane is ecstatic about this. I would be too, buddy. He rushes to the Astro Mega ship to get ready and gets all dappered up for his date, but at the same time, Ecliptor sends down a monster to fight the Rangers. Astronema didn't know about this. She didn't want it to happen, obviously, because she didn't want Zane to be preoccupied. But it happened, and Zane, being all frantic about this date and just being kind of locked in his room by himself, didn't really know at first. The other Rangers were fighting this monster, getting their ass handed to them, but he eventually does overhear Alpha kind of freaking out about the battle, and Zane, just being excited for this date, tries to ignore it and tries to sneak off the Astro Mega ship and just let his friends die, I guess. But Alpha finds him and convinces him to go help the Rangers. Reluctantly, Zane rushes to the battlefield and with a bunch of hormones running through his body, absolutely cooks the villain and heads off for his day. But once he reaches Astronema, it's too late. He left her waiting way too long, and she's no longer interested. He tries to tell her about the monster and how there was nothing he could do, but she didn't want to hear it, and that was that. And normally they probably wouldn't bring this up in the show afterwards in any other season, but in the very next episode, Zane's Destiny, we learn that there's still a little spark there. At the very beginning of the episode, Astro and Zane are on this mysterious planet, and Ecliptor wants to send down a little army to take them out while they're separated from the other Rangers. Astronema's a little reluctant at first once she realizes the Silver Ranger is down there, and once again takes out that little photo of him, but eventually goes along with the plan. And that was just kind of it after that. They didn't really explore this any further, and I think there was a big missed opportunity, especially when we get into Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, and Corona or Astronema becomes a Power Ranger herself. I think it would have been cool to bring Zane back for a little cameo and have them get together for kind of a, you know, final happy ending. And while the episode was a lot of fun, I think Power Rangers Time Force did it leagues better. And Nadira's dream date, they played it up to more of like a comedic tone than make it kind of a serious thing. At the beginning of the episode, Lucas the Blue Ranger is writing a little poem about his first race car. It's a very, like, romantic poem, and the other Rangers find it, make fun of him, but he was obviously in love with his first race car. But the Rangers end up dropping it, and later on in the day just go about their normal business and start fighting mutants again. And during this battle, Lucas gets into a little clash with Nadira, fights her, and then heads off. Thing is, he accidentally dropped his poem book right where they were fighting. Nadira finds this, starts reading through it, and because of how romantic it felt and the fact that they were just fighting each other, she thinks it's about her. She begins dreaming and romanticizing about Lucas the Blue Ranger, and eventually ends up telling Rancic about it, who is not happy at all. But Rancic, being an overprotective father and really loving his daughter, wants the best for her. He wants her to be happy. So for the rest of the episode, we just see Rancic, one of the most serious, scariest, and just overall evilest villains in the entirety of Power Rangers, be super nice to the Blue Ranger and help him go on dates with Nadira. Obviously, Lucas isn't too thrilled about this, but Rancic, wanting the best for his daughter, forces Lucas to go on dates with her. And he even helps Lucas on these dates. He's hiding, of course. He doesn't want Nadira to know that he's like meddling in their little date, but he gives Lucas a bunch of presents to give her. And it's one of the funniest Power Rangers episodes I've ever seen because of just the big character shift with Rancic, and I don't think we ever see him like this again. And Nadira ends up having a great time with these dates with the Blue Ranger and just falls in love with him even more. And Lucas realizes the only way to get out of this is for her to dump him. So he goes on another date with her, this time trying to be disgusting and be the least attractive version of himself as possible. She gets really upset about this, dumps him, and then, well, Rancic as it goes on a rampage. Once again, I think it's one of the funniest Power Rangers episodes, and if you have seen a couple episodes of Time Force, or even if you haven't, I still really recommend this episode. So we've covered both the villain and the Ranger being attracted to each other, and then just the villain being attracted to the Ranger, but what about the Ranger being attracted to the villain? Well, Power Rangers Ninja Storm actually has an example of this. In the episode all about Beevil, Mara, one of the main villains of the series, continues to mess up. She tries to be an evil villain, tries to live up to her family's legacy, but everything she does, she just screws up. And after one too many mess ups, Lothar, the main villain of the series, kicks Mara off the ship, says, "You're done. You're not good at being evil." Being upset and sad about this, because all she ever wanted to do was be evil, Mara ends up on Earth and starts sulking. And she ends up bumping into Dustin, the Yellow Ranger. But she doesn't have her usual, evil get-up attire on, so he doesn't really recognize her at first. He just sees a random girl crying and being upset. So he tries to comfort her. He's really nice to her, and Mara eventually unveils herself and her identity to him, and he's kind of taken aback by it, but by seeing how upset she was and hearing her story, he wants to help her. He said maybe being evil just isn't for her, and maybe she should try and be good for once and help the Rangers. I mean, it would be the best way to get back at Lothar for kicking her off of his ship. He tells the other Rangers about this, and they're very reluctant at first to try and help her at all, but Dustin really thinks that she's changed and sees the good in her. And at one point, Mara tells Dustin that she has a plan, she has a device that she knows can take down the villain of the week, Beevil. So she hands it to him, says, "Go charge this up at your, super secret Ranger base, and I can use it to take her down." Dustin agrees because he kind of has the hots for her, let's be honest. It was pretty obvious at that point, and goes along with the plan. He charges this up, he brings it to the final battle, and Mara uses it to supercharge the villain of the week. She absolutely played him, used him and his feelings to supercharge this weapon, and used that to convince Lothar to let her back on the ship. Dustin's heartbroken, of course, once he realized that she was just manipulating him to supercharge this weapon, and it becomes very clear that they didn't just bump into each other. This was her plan from the beginning. However, at the end of the episode, it's kind of hinted that she did kind of develop feelings for Dustin. While she was acting the entire time, she ended up actually caring for him, and it kind of gets dropped after that, but was very similar to the whole Astronema Zane situation there. A very similar thing was done in the Season 2 episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Goldar's Vice Versa. Goldar uses the turnabout dance that's going on in Angel Grove, where the girls ask the guys to the dance, to his advantage, because Adam, the Black Ranger, hasn't been asked yet. He disguises Scorpina as a new student at Angel Grove and gets her to introduce herself to Adam. They use the whole dance thing to their advantage to get Adam to start to develop feelings for Scorpina. Scorpina, and uses that to eventually lure him to destroy him. That was pretty much the extent of it. It wasn't that crazy of an episode, but it was another example. And it didn't go that far, but this was a fun episode and a fun watch. And these last two examples that I gave, the Rangers and the villains didn't necessarily date, but there was an attraction from the Ranger to the villain at least. But what if there's no real attraction at all? What if this was all just kind of fabricated under a love potion? Well, in the Super Mega Force episode Love is in the Air, a new villain of the week, Invidious, heads aboard the ship of Prince Vicar. And once he boards the ship, he realizes that Lavira, one of the other main villains of Super Mega Force, is there. And we learn that this is actually a childhood crush of his that he never really made a move on. So he devises a plan to get her to fall in love with him by making a love potion. After Lavira drinks this love potion, whoever she lays her eyes on first, she falls in love with. So he hands her this drink, she takes a sip of it, and unbeknownst to him, she was actually surveilling Jake, the Black Ranger, at that point. And this leads obviously to Lavira falling in love with Jake, which was not Invidious's plan. Lavira sends Invidious and a group of X-Borgs to go capture Jake and bring him back to her, but once Invidious finds out about this plan and that she actually loves Jake, he gets super jealous and upset and tries to destroy him. He doesn't want to just capture him and follow orders anymore, he wants him gone. This leads to some funny moments where Lavira tries to disrupt this battle, tries to save Jake from the monster of the week, and it's just this really cool back and forth. And while I'm not the biggest Super Mega Force fan, I think this is one of the better episodes and is a fun watch as well. Whenever this is played up to like a comedic value, I think it's really fun. Like the In Space and the Ninja Storm and Mighty Morphin episodes were good episodes, but like this episode and the one in Time Force was just comedic gold. And while watching these episodes for the video, I think this might be one of my favorite new subgenre of Power Ranger episodes. These might not be the only ones. There's about 1,000 episodes of Power Rangers and I haven't seen all of them. So I tried to do a little research, find all the ones that like fit this criteria. It's not a very easy thing to Google, but these were the 5 examples that I found. And if you want a good casual watch, just a random episode of Power Rangers to turn on, I recommend any of these. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.